Thank you for joining us today for Unlocking Funding with Customer Contracts. Wow, see, there's no coffee in this body, and I can't talk. My name is Lisa Tolliver. I am the training coordinator for Nevada SBDC. I'm excited for y'all to join us, but if you ever need other types of trainings, looking to have other experts join us, or talk to an advisor, jump on our website at nevadasbdc.org or give us a call. We are proudly funded by the SBA. Today's presenter is Acacia. She is phenomenal, and if you joined us last week, you know that she's got answers for lots of questions and suggestions and mentors that she's willing to share with you. So, Acacia is an award-winning lawyer and business coach dedicated to helping entrepreneurs unlock their full potential, combining 15 years of corporate law and consulting expertise with a holistic approach, which, yes, that is her, and she's got great information for you. So, Acacia, thank you for joining us today. It's your show.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Let me swap over and get my screen up and going for you. We're going to start off with a question today. I always start off with questions, but I love this one because this question is simply about, who's ever watched Shark Tank, right? Entrepreneur, yeah, I see some hands raised. I love it, right? Even if you just like to watch the show and the excitement and seeing new products, you're going to watch Shark Tank. But if you're an entrepreneur, we definitely see it. And what's going on in this show, right? We have this idea of a dream outcome. We've got entrepreneurs pitching to the sharks their ideas, their inventions, their business models, and then we have the sharks who are looking to potentially invest. They want to give their money and get something in return. So both sides have a dream outcome here. And when we look at, I'm going to use an equation here to just kind of help us all get grounded for a second. And this equation comes from Alex Hormozi's book, $1 Million. Can everyone please mute themselves? Seems like we have a few extras who are multitasking. Totally good. But I want to make sure everyone can hear. Thank you so much. So this equation comes from Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Offers. I love this book by Alex, and he uses it as a way to get into our customers' minds when they're evaluating which product to purchase, because his book is about writing offers. But I think it applies to a lot of things, and so I use it with my clients a lot. So let's take a look at this. We have a dream outcome. Whenever somebody is looking to purchase a product, you want to do something in your life, you're trying to get somebody to invest in your company or get funding, there's a dream outcome you are after. But it's not just the dream outcome that determines whether or not you're going to purchase something, right? It's the odds of success in doing that. If I purchase this product, if I take this action, how likely am I to actually get my dream outcome? Right? It's not, do I get it immediately and 100%, or do I have to use building blocks? Is this step one of 3 phases? And we counter all of those things. We know where we're going. We know what we want. We have the odds of success in getting there with this product. But how much time do we need to invest? How long is this going to take me to get to the dream outcome? Sure, going to the gym, I'll get a great body, but how long is that going to take me? Is that going to take me 6 months, a year? Or can I take a pill right now and there's no time to get from now to the dream outcome? So time is another factor that we consider as well when we're making decisions. Time from now to achieving that dream outcome. But then we also have to look at the investment. And the investment can be what's the price? How much do I have to pay for this? The investment can be, do I have to get up and go to the gym every day? All different types of investment. Do I have to give up gluten? Do I have to give up my coffee? Investment can be both in the positive and the negative here. And so this is what Alex says is the equation whenever people are looking to purchase or take an action towards something. The dream outcome, the odds of that success, but that is divided by the time and the investment necessary. And when it comes to the sharks on Shark Tank, when it comes to the banks looking to potentially give you a loan, when it comes to any type of investor, they're going through the exact same mindset, right? Their dream outcome is to get their money back and to make profit. Their odds of success is how likely will everything go to plan? How long will it take me to get my money back, to make this profit and have it realized? And the investment. What type of money or resources do I have to put into this company to make that happen, right? And so if we look at this from our potential customers' viewpoint here, and I put customers in quotes because we don't usually think of a bank or an investor as a customer because we're not selling them our product. But ultimately, we're trying to get them to buy into our company. So it is a form of customer, just a different one. So this is how that looks for them when they're making their decisions. They want their money back in the profit, times how likely is that going to be successful? What's the risk they're taking here? How long is it going to take them to get that money back, divided by the money and the resources? So let's just kind of like look at this in a little bit more of a detailed example for a moment. Like, let's say we already know they want their money back and their profit. Let's say the profit's going to be an interest rate of 4%. Okay. Now, how likely success? Now, when we're starting businesses, we're like 100% guaranteed. I'm in this. I am ready to make my business work. I am ready to make this successful. But the truth is there's no such thing as a risk-free investment when it comes to the banks or investors. There's always the chance that something could go wrong. An earthquake, somebody passes away, one of the companies gets purchased, things change in the marketplace. It's never 0% risk. And then this really plays into how long as well. Because the more time it takes for you to pay that back or for them to get their profits, the higher the risk is. Things changed a lot between 2019 and 2020. 1 year we saw the world change. And that would just be a 12-month contract right there, right? So when we have a 7-year loan, that's different. So it's both how long and how likely we are to succeed starts to impact these things. And then, of course, the money and the resources. Are they investing $1 million or are they investing $100,000? These play in. And so when you're looking to get an investment, win on Shark Tank, go get a bank to give you a loan, this is what they're looking at and this is what you're competing against. If somebody else comes in and has a higher likelihood of success and can get their money back faster, they might beat you based on what the bank or investor is looking to purchase in their decisions at that time. And so that's why we're going to look at this today. We're going to look at some key things that play into this. Now, what's really nice is who wins in this equation comes up really easily when we have young businesses or businesses that are looking to scale. There's two ways most companies go in to get that investment, either with a business plan or with a contract. When you have a business plan, it still isn't fully realized. The likelihood of success is actually lower, where with a contract, we already have buying customers. We already have revenue that is promised, not guaranteed, but promised, right? How long? Well, a business plan, we don't know how long it's going to take to build that community, to start selling. But with a contract, I can say I've got a 5-year contract here. At this month per year, I could probably get you that money back in 3 years. So contracts, using them to leverage and get that revenue, investment, I want to say revenue, but I don't want to confuse it with profits. But getting that money from investors and from banks, we increase our likelihood of winning that money over other businesses that are trying to get that money when we use our contracts. And that's why we're going to look at them today, because it's not usually a way we think of going to a bank. But a contract is a legal promise of something. And so that's why we're going to look at them. So those are the things we're going to look at today, 4 key areas that impact that equation for you, your odds of success. And then I'm also going to give you a freebie pack. Lisa's amazing, and she'll make sure you have everything. And then, of course, we'll have a live Q&A at the end of this. As Lisa said, my name is Acacia Thornton. Big background in coaching, consulting, and as a lawyer, I've worked with Fortune 500s, but I've also had success with the small business development center with the Wells Fargo Center out of Los Angeles. So I've worked with solopreneurs all the way up to the big companies. And I always focus less on the legal side of things, but on the revenue side. How do we close deals faster? How do we make more money? How do we get the investment you're looking for? I don't know why. And then, like I said, I'll show you a freebie. In addition to what Lisa's going to put together for you through the SBDC, I'm also going to give you a page of templates, today's slides, and some bonus videos as well. So you'll get a lot of stuff coming to you for hanging around. But let's look at that equation one more time. Money back plus the profit, how likely they are to succeed if they pick you, divided by how long it takes to get that money back, and what do they have to put in. And it's the two in pink that we're really going to focus on, because the other two vary business to business and based on your ask. So number one on the equation impact, revenue, consistency, and reliability. So let's say you're running a wedding planning business. You do events. This is wonderful. You're trying to get some investment or a loan, and you get denied by the bank. And they're going to be like, we need more consistency. We need more regular, predictable income. And we think of that sometimes as like, hey, I just need more clients. But as we'll see here in a bit, it's a little bit more than that. So consistency and reliability are really important if somebody's going to give you money, because they want to know if something falls off, there's other consistent, reliable income coming in. And it's going to indicate to them that you are ongoing, stable with your revenue. And so there's less likely, there's that risk factor is easier for them to swallow. It doesn't seem so risky. But this brings us up to a big fact that banks and the investors know. It is cheaper and easier to retain an existing customer than it is to get a new one. Every time we have to get and attract a new customer, we have to go through the whole funnel. Awareness, build trust, bring them in, get them to buy, make them happy. That could be long. It could be quick, but it's time consuming to do that over and over and over and over and over again. It's also resource intensive. But when you have somebody that's been through that, trusts you and purchases from you, it's easier to get them to purchase again. And so looking back at that wedding events company, let's think about like there's one wedding, right? Ideally, people are only getting married once. And if they are getting married, again, it's later down the road. And they may not choose the same wedding event company or caterer. But that means every single time you have to win the new bride and groom. And if we want to look at ways to get consistency and build that so it's not 1-1-1, what about, hey, if you also sign on for us to do your bridal shower and your rehearsal dinner, right? You're turning one sale into multiples. Even if you offer a discount to make it happen, you're getting a little bit more continuous revenue along the way, and you're building a little bit more consistency and reliability. And it's the same with licensing or technology. A license, I've seen so many companies, photographers, content creators, data companies, and software, they're just like, yep, here it is. Here's my product. Have an endpoint. Have them come back and relicense. Have them renew that license. Don't let them just have it and walk away. We can build consistency and reliability over time from that exact same customer. And so when you're having your customer contracts, this is one of the things they're going to start looking at, is the different ways you have this under contract. So those long-term commitments, right? Can you have multi-month or multi-year agreements, like I talked about with the licensing? Don't just have it, okay, here it is, sale is done. Let's get that ongoing. Hey, you're gonna renew every year. You're gonna renew every month. Keep that business moving forward. Any way you can make more than one sale on that agreement, like the wedding example, is going to be really, really helpful. Auto renew. Auto renew is great. It's not 100% guaranteed, as we'll see a little bit later, but auto renew does keep that going unless your customer intentionally wants to stop. And if things are working average or better than average, they're just gonna let it roll. We all see this with our Netflix and other subscriptions we have. We forget about them. Or we sometimes go in and we're like, is it worth canceling? I don't know, right? Once you have them in there, that auto renew can be very powerful, and you sometimes can get more revenue than they're getting the value of your product. Establish consistent payment schedules. Ongoing payment. Even if it's a year-long license, don't be like, okay, here's the annual payment. Can you make this monthly or quarterly billing? Because an example is, like, let's say you're a technology company and you do your payments on a 1 year, every year when they renew. Cool. But you have to wait 12 months for that money. As we've learned with COVID, a lot can happen in 12 months. Where if you spread out that payment over time, you have more consistent revenue coming in. And you don't have to worry about will the lump come 12 months from now. You can spread that out. And it gives you better cash flow, easier, predictable income and revenue on a smaller term basis, which means the investors and your lenders are going to appreciate that more too, because then they don't have to wait for these big lumps to come in. They can just see there's ongoing smooth sailing. So this is something that can be really, really great in that. You can also do partial payments up front or large payments into smaller, predictable ones. An example would be catering, right? When you cater an event, you don't want to wait for the event to get 100% of your money, because up front, you have to buy food. You have to put in the manpower. You have to maybe get equipment, delivery trucks. You're doing things up front. If you're expending that money, your investors and your banks are aware of this. That's a risk. That is a type of loan. You're taking a loan against yourself and your customers. You're praying to God that that customer pays by the end, because if not, you're the one who foots that bill. So doing things like, hey, 25% up front, 50% in the middle, 25% at the event. Things like that, breaking that up. And so making sure that you're aware of your initial investment, the time, the manpower, the money you're putting in. Maybe you have to customize software for somebody or a product. You've got to get in there. You're losing time and money that you can't do other things with. And if they can cancel that contract earlier or don't have to pay till later, you're the one who's taking on that risk with your resources and your money, and your banks, your lenders, and your investors see that. So it's something that you want to be mindful of. So just kind of looking back at your goal is to get that regular, predictable income shown in your contract, not just verbally agreed to, because you can't enforce that verbal thing. And your banks and your lenders are not going to see the verbal agreement. You can't say, well, the dude told me. Bank's not going to take that and invest because they see that as part of the risk factor. Get it in your contract, get it in writing, and you're going to show them how more likely you are to succeed and that you're going to be able to pay that a lot faster. Which brings us to our next one. Clear payment terms. Okay. Clear payment terms. Now this one you're probably like, well, yeah, duh. It's a no-brainer. But again, we're looking at the details in the contracts that these these investors, morning coffee, investors and banks are going to be looking at, right? They want to see precise terms outlining when and how payment is due from your customers. They want to see that in writing and not just a price. Oh, yes, I will pay $1,000 for your services. Okay, that doesn't tell me when and how you're paying me, which means the banks and investors don't know when and how you can pay them. That's part of that risk factor. They need to know when and how you can pay them. And so having that with your customers gives them assurance. And it's going to set clear expectations, leading to further dependable cash flow. You can kind of see a trend with that dependable cash flow element here. And it's going to show that the lenders that because you have that structured cash flow. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but what you'll also see is banks and investors don't just look at one contract. They look at you as a company as a whole. Not every contract is going to pay. Not every one of your contracts is going to pay on time, but they'll eventually pay. And then you're going to have customers who pay on time, and you're going to have customers that pay early. They know this. So you can't be 100%, I know everyone's going to pay me early. Let's look at the contract terms. And there's always the ones down the road who ultimately don't pay partially because maybe they can't pay. Maybe something's changed. And so being mindful of the overall picture that you're creating with your company contracts, because it's not just one or two that's going to do it. Although you can get investment and lending with a single big contract. It is possible. Like let's say you're a caterer and you've mostly done small events and now you have a massive event. Maybe you're getting some award show at the MGM. This isn't crazy. Suddenly your $1,000 events have become a $100,000 event. You need supplies, people, resources. you might be able to get something for that to help you do that single contract. But they're also going to want to see how you are overall as a company, because something happens with that single contract that impacts the investor's risk factors in investing in you. So it's not impossible to do it with one contract, but the overall picture you're painting of your company when you're doing these things is really important. So we're going to look at two things here when it comes to outlining when and how payment is due. We're going to look at the acceptance clause, which if you were on last week's call, we really went into some depth about acceptance clauses. We're not going to go in as much depth today, so if this is something that you want to learn more about, know that last week's call had a big chunk on that. But we are going to add to it. We're going to look at some payment terms combos. So I had a client earlier this year. Her name is Kiki. Kiki is amazing. She does design work. She designs logos, marketing materials, things like that. She's been doing it for over a decade. She's phenomenal. She has a team. And she recently had a client named Guy. Guy was awesome. They were doing stuff every single month together. He's paying on time. He loves her work. He's giving feedback, open communication, milestones happening. Everybody is happy. When it comes to the final project, Kiki sends it off to Guy. And Guy goes silent. She's like, where is he? What's he doing? Like, he must like it. I'm sure he likes it because we've had a great relationship for the past 7 months. He loved everything we made up into this, so I'm sure he must just love the final product, of course. But she doesn't hear anything. Nothing. Crickets. She's like, okay, well, I'm assuming he's off using it at his event, so all good, I'll send him the invoice. She sends him the invoice and then waits. And Guy doesn't pay the invoice. So now she's tracking down Guy. Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Hey, Guy, just touching base. Want to see where you are with that invoice. Did you like the materials we sent over? Hey, no, Guy, seriously. You're overdue on your invoice. It's been 60 days now. What the heck? She eventually gets him on the phone and is like, what's going on? And he cusses her out. He cusses her out. This work is crap. This is horrible. I'm not going to pay for this. And she's just like, what? What are you talking? I haven't heard from you. If you didn't like it, you could have told me. I would have given you revisions. And so she's like thinking the work is done. It's been months. She's done with this. She's moved on to other projects. She just wants her money. And he's like, I'm not going to pay you. Well, we have a little bit of a dilemma here. Kiki's done her job. Kiki's done her work. She's delivered something. And the client is saying he doesn't want to pay. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, does the customer have the right to reject her work months later? Does Kiki have the right to get paid for the work she did, even if he does or doesn't like it? Maybe he's lying. Maybe he does like it. Maybe he's already used it and he just doesn't want to pay for it. Truth is, we don't know. So what Kiki and I did is we created acceptance clauses into her contracts. What an acceptance clause is it defines the process and the criteria for when products and services are deemed delivered, right? This applies to physical products as well. In the Amazon era, we expect things to be delivered to our door. But then if it gets stolen, well, did Amazon finish their job when they got it to your door? And it's your responsibility now that once it's at your door, or does it wait till you open that door and hold that package? When is delivery done? Back in the day, before we had reliable delivery systems, there was a question mark if it would actually get to you, right? Think about the old Wells Fargo wagons and things like that. Maybe there's a highway robbery. The manufacturer will be like, well, I put your stuff on the cart. It's on its way to you. And the other side will be like, well, I never got it. Manufacturer says, I'm done. I made the product on time. I shipped it. Other side, I never got it. Acceptance clauses help us clarify the process and the criteria for these things, right? Because once we know something is deemed legally delivered, now you get your payment due. And that's really, really important because payment is what your investors and your lenders are going to be looking for. So an acceptance clause is something they're looking for with your customers. They want to know what it takes to actually have the job done and earn that money, to officially, legally earn your money. So here's an example of an acceptance clause. This is very similar to the one we added for Kiki. Customer has 7 days after each delivery to provide feedback and request any revisions via email. After 7 days, delivery is deemed accepted by the customer and the designer will issue the invoice. Do you see how this clarifies? When Kiki is done with her job is done when she sends it to you. You have 7 days to tell her if that's not good enough or if you want revisions or anything else. You get a window of opportunity, but it's not forever. You can't come back 90 days later like I did and just refuse to pay. He had his chance to give feedback and he didn't. And now with an acceptance clause that's clearly communicated. And then as indicated here, once it's deemed delivered or formally accepted, which is why we call them acceptance clauses, the invoice can be issued. So these are really important because it lets you, your customer, and your bank or investor know what needs to be done to earn that money. I told a story last week as well about how I had a client who was on the other end of this. Their customer kept coming back with more feedback requests. Hey, we need this. Hey, we need that. We need this. We need that. And so the company came to me and they're like, we can't keep doing revisions for these guys. We need this contract to be done. We have other projects we need to go to. It's no longer worth our time and money based on how much manpower it takes to get this done. And I was like, well, have you finished everything you need to get finished? Let's look at the acceptance clause. What does your acceptance clause say needs to be done to officially earn your money under this contract? And it turns out they needed to finish certain items in their SOW, statement of work, to get that done. I was like, go finish those. And then your obligations, according to this acceptance clause, are done. And you can now start saying no to the customer or saying no unless you pay more, right? So acceptance clauses work for both sides. Lets everybody have that clear communication. And then it now says it's time to get paid. So let's look at payment terms for a second, because this is the part we didn't talk about last week. Is you do want precise terms outlining when and how payment is due. Net 15, due upon receipt. Okay, so you're going to send the invoice. Now, how long do they have to pay that invoice? Some companies like to do like a net 60. That's really common with big companies. And maybe you have that with your vendors. And that could be really nice. You're like, I've got 60 days to pay my suppliers. That's cool. I don't have to worry so much. But when you're looking at an investor coming in or a bank giving you a loan, they see that as you're constantly having 60 days of debt because that invoice has been issued to you. You haven't paid it yet. That's debt. And so when you allow your customers to do the same by pushing things off, you end up in the middle of lag money coming in while you're building up the debt you owe your suppliers or the payroll you owe your team. Balancing these two sides of the equation is really, really important when your vendors, your investors, and your lenders come in, because they're going to look at that. It's not just the money you have coming in, but where's that money going? How fast? How soon? Because that's who they're competing with. If you owe your suppliers $1 million this year and you owe your bank $1 million, well, who gets their $1 million first? Part of that time element of the equation. So making sure that we know both sides here and having a short-term and very clear payment guideline to your customers. Don't just send an invoice. Say, once you get this invoice, you have 15 days to pay me. You have 30 days to pay me. And you want to ensure that every single contract has that specific payment deadline in it. As well as how they can pay you. With a lot of different ways, from Venmo, PayPal, Square, just online processing, we become aware of the transaction fees. But who's paying for these when and where? One that we kind of had in our last example, I talked about how delivering a product, right? That acceptance. You've made the product. You've put it onto UPS's truck. Just because it hasn't made it to the other side yet, who is responsible? You've done your job. Well, what if something goes wrong in between? You've built all of the product. You have shipped all of the product, and somehow that product doesn't make it to the other side. Okay, do you have to pay to rebuild and remake that whole shipment again, but faster? And do you have to pay for the rush delivery to make up that gap because it hasn't made it to the customer yet? Or does your customer pay those things? So being aware of the entire equation of your acceptance clause to your payment terms and filling that entire gap, think it out practically. This is how I would behave. This is what I would want. My customer needs to tell me they didn't get the delivery within 3 days. Otherwise, I don't have enough time to respond and react. Things like this, think them through and put them directly into your contracts, because your banks and your investors are going to be evaluating this, because your practical steps and the impact it has on their risk, the time it takes, but also how fast you can get your hands on that revenue is imperative to your success in getting that loan or investment. And so they're going to look at these things with great detail. Just a little side note here, purchase orders. Sometimes our customers use purchase orders. This is okay. It's part of their admin process. But 2 key things. Never sign a purchase order. Never actually sign one. Here's why. When you have a purchase order, it almost always has its own terms and conditions on it. Always. That is what your customer is trying to do. It might be as simple as a hyperlink. It might have the full terms and conditions, that small print on there, might be directly on there. When you sign that, you're signing new terms after they had signed your contract, but also this is the one you're actually going to be acting on to fulfill the request. Meaning these terms and conditions push out your terms and conditions. You only want one contract per transaction. Do not sign the purchase order. In fact, not only do I want you to not sign it, I want you to put something in your contracts with your customers that says nothing contained in your purchase order is going to affect this, right? Including any purchase order terms and conditions will modify this agreement or any additional terms or conditions to this agreement. The PO is merely for your administrative purposes only, dear client, to help you pay your bill, right? Sometimes it is part of their, especially if they have a big accounts payable division, they need purchase orders to stay on top of things. But don't let those purchase orders override your terms and your payment terms. You need what you have to be number one always. So don't sign them and then put something in your customer contracts that clearly pushes them out so you don't accidentally, or somebody on your team accidentally end up using new terms that you didn't mean, because now you're on the customer's terms and not yours. And that really happens in the payment term area, which is why I mention it here. So looking back at how all this fits into the equation, how the likelihood of success that your investor or your bank is to get their money back, and how long it's going to take you, these acceptance clauses and these clear payment terms have a really big impact on that analysis for them. And it's not just from your customer side, but remember, you have debt for every one of your bills you don't pay on a monthly basis. The faster you get those off your plate, the lower your debt is, even though it's only 60-day debt if you have a net 60. But be aware of those payment terms that you owe and how your customers are paying you to make sure that you have a positive cash flow no matter what. And that'll help you succeed when it comes to this equation. All right, moving on to termination clauses. Another fact, if your customer can terminate the contract, they can stop your revenue. This one I get a lot when I train sales teams. I've done a lot of training of sales teams in my career, and sales teams don't always understand that when we promise little things to the customer, they impact that revenue coming in. So what I get from from sales reps a lot is they'll be like, hey, customer wants to sign a 5-year deal. This is awesome. We've agreed to pricing for 5 years. Here's all the payment milestones. This is amazing. I love it. But one little thing, they need this 90-day out clause that says they can terminate after 90 days. Don't worry, they won't. They won't. It's a 5-year contract. If they can terminate, they can stop the revenue, right? A lot can happen in 5 years. There's a lot in nowadays terms, from technology to the laws, privacy, COVID. 5 years is a long time. So while that sounds great for the revenue, a lot could happen to your customer. And so termination clauses are massive when it comes to how likely you actually have that revenue. Because a promise of revenue on a contract is not a guarantee of that revenue if you have a termination clause. We talked about termination clauses a lot last week. We're going to take it a little bit different direction today. So if you want to learn more about termination clauses, we go into greater depth in last week's call. They are imperative to the success of your revenue, especially if you're trying to rely on that revenue, even for your own investments and for your own payroll. So what is a termination clause? A termination clause are circumstances under which a party can legally end the contract. If they can end the contract with 90-day notice, day 91 is not guaranteed. It's not, because they can terminate the contract before you get there. So here's an example of some terms you might see. Either party may terminate this agreement at any time by providing 30-day written notice together. This is a 30-day termination. We call this for convenience because it doesn't say it can only happen for certain situations. They can terminate just because they feel like it. Maybe your competitor comes along, gives them a better rate. Maybe they can get a better profit margin, or they have a new partner. I've had that happen with a client. They were working with a company, helping them get into the industry for the first time, giving them 10% of that industry. Imagine that, 10% of a new industry from day one with this partnership. It was amazing. But a year in, the biggest player, who had 90% of the market, comes over and says, we want to work with you. And of course, my client's like, oh, hell yeah. We want 90% of the market plus our 10%? Yes. Well, the big player says, yeah, we'll do it on one condition. You got to give us exclusivity. So now my client has to choose between the 90% of the market or the 10% of the market that they've already agreed to. Even though this was a 5-year contract, everything was going great. Well, it's kind of a no-brainer from a business perspective. Who doesn't want 90%? It wasn't personal. It wasn't even a bad thing. It just needed to end so something better could happen. So termination clauses are not just when somebody's trying to cut costs, or as we saw with COVID and recessions and things like that. Look, people have to cut ends. And if your contract is one of the easiest ones they can terminate, guess what? You're most likely to be on the chopping block. Your investors and your banks know this. So that's why they're going to be looking at your termination clauses. Oh, my formatting is off. That's super weird. Okay, so what does a termination clause do? It provides an exit strategy for your customers, sometimes you as well. It stops your revenue. And there could be an aggregate impact. So these are the 3 things we're going to look at with a termination clause here. Provides an exit strategy. How do we offset this? We need to offset it by either stopping or slowing down that exit, right? An example would be the time frame. How soon does that termination become effective? First off, termination clauses off the paper altogether are ideal. You don't want customers who can terminate. But sometimes there are reasonable things to have on an agreement. Like nobody wants to be forced into a contract if somebody's breaching it. So your customers might want these for real, practical, valuable reasons. But we want to be mindful we're not just handing them out like candy for any reason because they can impact you. So things you want to look at if your customer insists on one, the time frame. How soon does termination become effective? Can they give notice from day one and then that notice becomes effective 30 days later? Or can they not cancel for 2 years? After 2 years of the contract, customer may give 90-day notice, right? We've made a way that those first 2 years are guaranteed and then it becomes 90 days. So we shifted the time frame, both about how soon they can give notice, but also when does that notice actually become a terminated contract. Triggers, the conditions under which they may terminate. The one we gave in the beginning can cancel for upon 30-day notice. They can cancel for any reason. They can cancel because the Bears lost to the Raiders, right? They could do that. It's not what you want. Hopefully they make better business decisions than that, but they can cancel for any reason. So we want to build things in that say only upon, breach of this contract, failure to pay, failure to deliver, those types of things. We want to narrow the conditions, the triggers under which your customers can get out of it. Wow, formatting changes. I had to even proof these this morning. Process and notice. The steps that the party must take to actually get out of it. It's one thing to have notice. It's another to be like, hey, once you give notice, we have 60 days to work through it. And then if we can't work through it, then you can get out. So see how every one of these is slowing down how fast that exit happens. We're trying to stop it or slow it down. Reduces the risk of somebody investing in you and you not getting that money, or that contract not being fulfilled, and so on. Okay? So we want to stop or slow down that exit strategy for them. Stopping the revenue. Penalty or revenue for that termination. Okay. You want to, let's say they do need to cancel. Hey, look, we really want to cancel. Okay. 50% fee if you cancel within the first year or within 14 days of service, right? Because if you're doing something up front, if you have to have an ROI in the beginning, maybe you're customizing something, maybe you're buying those food ingredients, maybe you're designing something and you haven't made the thing yet, but you got to start designing. You want to at least cover what you've put in. If they cancel midway, okay, fine. But I still need to recover what I've put in there. So let's put some penalties in there, like 50% fee if you cancel within a certain time. Another one is that you could do flat rate fees. Customers shall pay a fee equal to 1 year's fees for early termination. So, okay, maybe they want to it's a 5-year contract, they get out after year 2, cool, but you actually have to pay for year 3. That's your penalty. So now you have a year of extra revenue. Even you would have wanted the 5 years of revenue, of course. But rather than just having 2 years, you get a third year because there's that fee and you're charging them a flat rate fee for that. Another one is the percentage of the outstanding. You can also do this with your milestone payments, right? 25% up front, 50% in the middle, and 25% at the end. That is a form of a penalty or milestone look at getting out of it. If it doesn't end up happening, cool, you've gotten some payments along the way. Ones that I've also seen is like, okay, if canceled in year 1, you have to pay an early termination fee of 60%. So cool, you can get out. You're not going to be stuck for the full 5 years, but you are going to pay me 60% of that 5-year value. If you cancel in 2 years, well, okay, you've gotten 2 years of the revenue, so that fee can be a little less, 40%. These are just some of the ways that people have gotten creative. Another one that I've seen is if you ever have bundled products or they're doing multiple products of yours, if they maybe cancel 1 or 2 of those products but not the others, increase the price. You've canceled early, cool, but for every one of those you canceled, the other ones go up 20% because you're unbundling. So we can see how the revenue might stop. We can offset that with penalties or getting the revenue along the way so it's not just a one and done, hit the wall, you're out of money. That's what we want to stop and prevent. And then the aggregate impact. When it comes to termination clauses or anything really in your company, you're going to notice that things happen either one customer at a time. This customer is having difficulties. This company is merging. This company is taking on a new technology or building a new division, right? Things happen one customer at a time. But they also happen industries at a time. A new player has come in and disrupted the industry. Technology has suddenly become illegal. The laws change. Recession happens, right? Certain industries during COVID thrived while others went down. Industry pockets. And I mention this because your termination clauses might happen one customer at a time, or you might find out a whole chunk of your customers go for the same reason. It is one thing to get one customer trying to terminate and get out early. It's another when suddenly half of your clients are giving their 30-day notice to you. You've dropped off. You're going to fuel that pain in a collective aggregate manner. And your investors and your banks, they know this. So they're going to look at this both in the individual contract risk, but also what does this do to your company as a whole if there are industry or shared commonalities across the industry or your customers that impact. What would it be like if everybody took the same step at the same time? Will your business survive? Right? If your customers can terminate your contract, doesn't matter the reason, doesn't matter the timeline, they can stop your revenue. And this is really important in your equation, right? The dream outcome times the odds of success divided by the time and the investment needed to get to that dream outcome. How likely are they to get their money back with their profit times the likeliness of success? We've looked at a few things today that demonstrate that just because we have a contract doesn't guarantee that that's 100%. It doesn't guarantee things are going to go the way we want. Nobody can predict the future. And one of the best things about business, it's dynamic. It's always changing. New technologies, new ideas, new creative things. We love this. We want it to change. We want it to grow. We want to be part of that excitement as entrepreneurs. But that also means it's always going to be changing. It's a roller coaster. It's a fun one. But sometimes we've got to be ready for the ups and the downs. And so when your investors and the banks are looking at how long is it going to take to get that money back, if you're only getting paid once a year by a bunch of your customers, that is less reliable for them than knowing that you have money coming in every 30, 60 days. 30, 60 days from multiple sources, they can see that they can start getting their money back in littler chunks along the way. And they don't have to rely that last year's chunk made it and you're going to be able to pay across the year. And then, of course, the money of what you're asking and the resources they need. Do they have to give you training? Can they just give you the money? What's necessary? And this is one of the reasons your contracts are such a big deal in the success for your getting that lending and that investment over those who are just using a business plan with the business model. That's a dream, that's a wish. You have already proven it's something that works. You have customers, you have revenue that is promised. But we want to make sure that revenue is consistent and reliable. We want to have those clear payment terms, including that acceptance and payment that we talked about, right? And balancing both sides with your payment obligations, as well as your customers' payment obligations to you. And of course, watching for those early termination areas. All right. So there are definitely other things that play into whether or not banks and investors will give into your business. Things like transfers. If something happens to you, is there a legacy plan? How can that contract, your customer contract, be taken over easily by somebody else? You don't want to have anything in there that's preventing that success. Insurance. Sometimes you want your customers to have insurance that insures you based on what you're doing, not just your insurance. And then, of course, every industry and every loan request or investor ask is going to be a little bit different, but being mindful of all of these types of things is what they're going to be looking at as they evaluate that equation to see how successful you're going to be to help them be successful. All right, so let's open it up to Q&A. Lisa, if you don't mind, as you know, I can't see the chat. And for those of you, if you want to get into that new business pack page, I promised that I would give you. This is the QR code, but I know Lisa will also be sending it out to you here in about a day or two.
Someone earlier on in the hour had requested your socials, and I provided them your website.
Oh, awesome.
Are all your socials just your name?
No. LinkedIn, which is under my name, is where I put most of my stuff, but I do occasionally put things on Instagram as well. And Instagram is at CEOLegalCoach.
Perfect. All right. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, you should be able to, and you can ask Acacia your question.
Did anybody learn anything new here? Was there anything that was really impactful for all of you that you're like, hey, I never thought of it that way, or that's new to me? Because this helps me make more content as well when I know what the industry is looking to learn more about. If you guys don't mind, as you think of your ideas or your questions right now, kind of putting that into the chat so I can see how that is helping all of you as well. Ooh, what do you got here? Okay. Was it a contract he had with entire counties? I love this, right? Sarah made a point earlier about how even on Shark Tank, having a contract is great because it demonstrates that your idea is viable. There is a customer on the other end. And usually if there's one customer, we can get more. And the more we can show, the more likely they are to want to invest. Because it means your idea is so unique and original, they had never thought of it to even be successful. But you've proven them that you not only are great at making an idea, you can make that profit. You can make that sale happen. And that's usually where a lot of entrepreneurs are really good at sales or really good at building the business idea. But that combo is powerful because that combo is what means success, which is why having these contracts is one of the biggest ways to get funding and investment. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing.
And then one question did come in, or two. Any recommendations as far as a contract dealing with a CPR training company?
A CPR training company? CPR. I'm not sure which acronym they're using in that one. If you guys don't mind telling me exactly what that ask is. But training in general, training's usually, as we see here, there's always something that's next. There's always next questions. But there's also implementing it. How do they implement it? What can you do to help them implement that and create a funnel that takes your client from the beginning of a training to what is their dream outcome? Their dream outcome is really getting everything integrated in a flow to where you don't even think about it anymore. And you're feeling the benefits of what they were after there. So I would recommend for your consistency in your revenue, try building out different phases and making sure that that revenue is coming in at different milestones across that. You can also do based on success, based on their profits, less likely to win over a lender or a bank, because your success is reliant on somebody else's success. That can be a little bit different. But yeah, I would kind of do that. And then the termination clauses, right? Being very mindful of that, hey, cool. I get that you might not need 2 years worth of training and implementation. Something might change along the way because businesses change, right? Where we are today is not where we'll be in 2 years. But I do have to put time and money into building these things for you. These training decks, these contracts, whatever it is that you're building for your customer, and making sure that there's those cancellation. I would do cancellation percentages along the way. So that way there's something to offset.
It was CPR first aid.
CPR first aid. It's almost first aid. Yeah, I mean, it almost doesn't matter what the topic is, but trying to build that longer, bigger picture revenue, right? Don't just look at the individual training. Why are they learning CPR? How does this fit into their business? Can they give you something else I've seen, because I do public speaking, is that it'd be like, cool. Can you, as part of our contract, you're going to give me 3 direct referrals. I'll go talk at your company for $2,500, but then, and that's half the fee that I normally paid, but you're going to give me 3 direct referrals. And when I say direct referrals, I want their name. I want an email directly to them. I want you're saying that you're like, hey, hire this person, right? A referral is huge. It's huge. You can put that in your contract as part of your package. So get creative about what's that next sale, right? Don't let it be one single sale, one and done. What can you do to get to the next one to get more revenue out of the business relationship you've already made with this customer?
The next question was, if I signed an invoice, am I obligated to that invoice?
Invoices are difficult because an invoice is usually issued based on an existing contract. But sometimes the invoice itself is meant like a PO where it has those terms. This is why it's important to know what we're signing and check. Do you have a master agreement that this was off of? It will take a sit down just to look at it. If you have signed an invoice, which it is kind of weird to sign an invoice because an invoice is just the bill, right? When you get your electric bill, you don't sign that. You're just like, I have to pay this. So looking at, are there terms and conditions on it? And why did you have to sign it? Because if you're signing something, you're formally agreeing to something. So being mindful of what that is, and is it overriding something else that already exists? If it does, of course, stop, unless that's what you want. But also go back and fix the first contract. Hey, there will be no signing of invoices. POs are just for administrative purposes only. They will not impact the others. And then just please stop signing them unless you have a reason to.
For design services, do you have any advice in letters of intent?
A letter of intent. All right, a letter of intent is half a contract, half not. What's challenging about different names of contracts? Letter of intent, SOW, work order. They're just titles of a document. Every one of those documents could do the exact same thing. Same with the master agreement. The master agreement might have all the terms and conditions and outline what the project is. So it's important to not just be looking at the title of your document, but what are its contents? What are you agreeing to? What's missing? A letter of intent usually is the idea that we're going to enter into an agreement, which means there's not much to enforce yet. You can enforce the intent to enter something, but until you have that signed contract with the terms you want, you don't actually have the true customer contract. Again, it's less about the name of the document and more about what's in it. But usually intent means we're working towards it. We're not there yet. And so being mindful that you finish the terms that you need. Letter intent is unlikely to get you lending or investing.
Someone's interested in buying an existing business. They're interested in having them sign a contract for the purchase.
Okay.
What's the best way to go to the bank for a loan to purchase the business?
Ooh, okay. 2 layers. Whenever we are looking at buying a company, we are looking at 2 things. We have our own business model that we're looking at, right? You have your own business model, your own success, your odds of success, things that you can already show with your revenue flow for the past few years, hopefully if you have one. There's also that for the next company. There's that? If nothing else changes, it's just 2 layers of the exact same things of the equation. It's equation 1 for your business, same equation for the other business. But they're going to look at it together. How does this business enhance your business? Because that's the risk they're taking. This is just a company. Is that owner staying on? Are those things going to stay in business? Or are you taking that apart? Right? Sometimes we buy a home to refurbish it, to flip it. Sometimes we buy it to live in it and build it into something amazing. Why are you buying the company? How does that fit into your revenue model? How does their existing revenue model, how are you going to impact that? Are you taking it apart? Are you enhancing it? Painting this full picture of each company individually plus collectively, because that's going to look at their risk and that's going to determine whether or not it's a good business decision, not only for you, but for them. And if it's a good business decision, you'll almost always get that lending for that. If you can demonstrate that and offset the risk of you as just a normal, do you normally pay your bills, right? Those normal type of credit factors. But yeah, we're looking at 2 business models, and most importantly, are you going to enhance each other? Can you demonstrate that? Great question.
In the landscaping industry, projects often have variables outside of our control, like weather or unexpected site conditions. How do we structure our contracts to protect the company while ensuring flexibility and fair terms for our clients?
Yeah, this is one of those kind of almost to the acceptance turns. When is your job done? When your customers expect it to be done? If there's something that gets in your way, inclement weather, okay, you need the variability in your contract that says, hey, if inclement weather happens, I have this much time to deliver my product, come and do your landscaping, and so on. So you kind of want to be mindful of those things and build them into your contract in a way that makes sense for your business. Every customer is going to have a different opinion about those things, but how do you want to function? Because you also are going to have this across multiple customers, right? Bad weather comes in, it affects multiple customers. How is that going to affect your business as a whole? How do you want to proceed? And put some guidelines in there, almost like the acceptance clause is what do you need to get the product delivered if something gets in your way? Work backwards and then build that into your contracts. I'm liking today's questions. These are really good questions.
What if my quotes have terms and conditions? Is it a binding document if my client signs my quote instead of issuing a PO?
It's usually fine. Again, you want to make sure that that is based off of high-level contracts and low-level contracts. It is possible with our customers we just have one document. Bam, here's everything. Here's everything every single time. When we have ongoing customers that are repeat, like issuing POs or just invoices, we don't have to want to redo and re-sign a contract every single time. That's annoying, right? So we just put this master agreement into place. Master is just a title, like I had mentioned, but usually they're called some type of master agreement, master services agreement. And then when you have your invoices and your POs, they're coming off of these, off the big one. Same when you might have an order form or an SOW, a statement of work. The order form is just what we need right now. It doesn't have all your terms and conditions. The SOW just has what we need right now. What's this project? What are the timelines for this project? How is this one going to play out? But we don't go back and re-sign everything. We don't re-sign the payment terms and the indemnity and the insurance and the caps on liability and what happens if there's dispute resolution, which, by the way, that's another thing banks and investors care about, dispute resolution. We don't have to redo that all the time. So we have this master agreement. And then for any of these others, any of them, doesn't matter what they're called, what's important is that they reference that master agreement. Hey, this PO is being issued under the master that we signed on X date. Hey, this order form is being issued under this master. Because what that's saying is everything that's not on this piece of paper is on that master. And so being mindful, are you trying to do one document that has everything? If so, make sure it has everything. If not, and you're referring back to another contract, that's fine. You can have the mini ones along the way. Makes life a lot easier for highly transactional businesses. But it doesn't have everything. So you want to make sure it's referencing that master contract. So what I usually advise my clients to do when they're in that type of situation is get that master agreement early and upfront with your customer relationship. And then from there, you can just issue the POs, do the invoices, do the order forms, the SOWs, whatever you want to call them, project by project. So you're not redoing the big work every time. I hope that answers the question.
And then the last one is, could you give an example of like a contract, how it would apply to like a retail product business?
A retail product. Okay, I don't know if you're the store or if you're the physical product. Okay. Because you don't have, when it comes to a customer walking into your store, we use a social contract, right? Please don't steal. Please pay for your things. But that also means there's no contract with your customers. So you can't really get lending off of that. You're using a bit more of the business model. Hey, this is how many customers walk in through the door. This is their average sale. This is how often those sales happen. You're using a different influencer when you're telling the story to your potential investor. If you're in a physical product and you have a customer, back to the acceptance and delivery, right? That delivery. When is that physical product there? What are the obligations for that physical product? What if something goes wrong or slows down on your end? What happens if something slows down or goes wrong on the customer's end? And playing that out. Just like I had recommended with the landscaping, it's the same whether your product is a digital product, a physical product, or services. How is this going to play out in every one of these scenarios? When is delivery done? When is it time to send that invoice? How long does it take to get that invoice paid? How often is that revenue coming into your business on a level that you can demonstrate and prove on paper? Today's talk was about the contracts element, right? Those contracts that we have. And then the consistency and ongoing of that and balancing that against whatever debt you might have. And remember, debt is not just carrying actual debt. Debt is just even your unpaid invoices to your vendors and your suppliers. So balancing all of that, look at what that is in your equation and how your product fits in with that. And if you want to expand, we talked about this a little bit last week, is the vertical. How do your vendors and your suppliers play into you? How do you play into your customers? Your customers are also vendors and suppliers to somebody if you're doing B2B, right? You're both a customer to your vendor suppliers, but you're also the sales and the business the vendor to your customers. There's a vertical going on. And so being mindful of these things, and that's going to change a little bit industry to industry, particularly if you're doing a physical product in the retail, being mindful of those pieces and just seeing how things would practically play out. So need a little bit more information to detailed give an answer to your question, but I hope that answered it.